Okay, we're back on. We were talking about your partnership with Ray Goulding.
Yeah.
Talk about how you guys wrote together. Did you divide your duties? How did that work?
Well, we once we had got a foothold on the network and in New York, and we're doing so much material, we did have to begin to search for people who could help us with all these hours on the air, in both TV, radio, and TV. And the first person they gave us was Ray Knight, who you may remember hearing about being really the first radio-born comic. He got in radio early, in the early 30s, and became a big star with a cast like we did, and it was the Cuckoo Hour, station KUKU, and he made his name with that. And then he did another serial show called House in the Country, and he wrote and appeared in all of those. And he was the first writer that they got for us. And as the time went by, we had an assortment of interesting people. Fred Pearson worked with Ray Knight when he became a writer for us. He wrote Fractured French. You remember that book? And Tony Webster, who was a good friend of mine, and he wrote for us for a while. Who else? Well, we had the two Simon brothers for one summer. In fact, I think it was that Club Embassy show that we did. It was Danny and Doc Simon, and Doc Simon, of course, was the big one that they worked together in those days. But what they did, which was a top flight humor and perfect for Sid Caesar and the other people he wrote for, it wasn't really, to us, it wasn't the type of thing that we could play with and make our own. So that thing, that was, I think, before Doc had his first Broadway show. I don't think, that was way back. But we had fun writers, and we got along with all of them pretty well. You hear awful stories about the performer and the writer, but we had to, and we were doing a lot of the type of thing that Ray Knight invented and did first, and the first one to do it on the radio. I mean, he'd never done theater or any of that stuff. Came right out of Yale Drama School, I think, and went into radio. And Ray the same with me as far as writers. You know, we took it because we grasped at having some help at the times we needed it, and but the stuff we loved best over all the years and that we agreed completely on was what we picked out to do in the Broadway show, which was an hour and a half. I think it had one little routine in it that was written by Tom Cook, who did a lot of our stuff. Good amount after we were there a while. And he wrote for us. But they were fun people to work with. Does that end that?
Yeah, what would you say is the style, the comedy style of Bob and Ray?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think we've had that question before, one way or another. I think we created part of it. We hear all the time from guys, or we run into big names for one reason or another, who say they got so much of their learning experience from listening to us, and I guess it must be true. Although it's pretty hard. The stuff we did was so personal. You couldn't send a road company of the Bob and Ray Broadway show with two other guys doing it would be an impossibility because everybody heard what we did and had their own vision of what we looked like. They saw us on TV occasionally, but we just had a thing. I don't know what style you would call it. The thing we did most was interviews. I mean, we did so many of these, and there was always, something that would come out of it that we could use as basis for material. I haven't found any today yet, but I don't have a show anyway. So.
Did you use things that happened in your own life?
Yes. I think we did, yeah. I mean, like getting the new car and going to a particular place for a vacation. We did a lot of stuff with a Maine background to it because lovingly we looked at Maine as really country, like you'd look at the Middle West, and Maine was closer to Boston, so we would use a town called Bailey's Mistake in Maine, which there is one, as a place where the Wally Ballou would talk to the fire chief or something of that sort. It all devolved, or whatever, came to interviews.
What about politics and what was going on, current events? Did you touch those?
We were both very interested in politics, and Ray was quite active now and then in the local out there in Long Island. I wasn't, or never did. I wasn't that politically oriented. But we always did stuff that was so general. We did several political bits in the Broadway thing, and over the years that we were so familiar to anybody that it was political, but it was political general, like the poor loser who makes the statement after the election is over, and he's practically crying and doesn't wish the winner any good luck, or in fact he hoped the winner would probably have bad luck and shouldn't have been elected. Just things that you always think of that when you see a guy make a speech of whatever that's called when you're defeated.
A concession.
Yeah, concession. But we did that in the show, and as I say, all of that, those were our favorite things, and they were all out of our being a team.
You were called out though about you did do some bits on McCarthyism.
Yeah, we did that, and looking back, it was quite daring. That was when we were on the early morning thing way back in New York. And we would go every day into the bar next door and watch what happened, and then come back the next day in our morning soap episode and do a parody on everything that had happened in the trial that afternoon, but as it occurred to the backstages of the family that we had the story built around. And Ray did a great McCarthy. You couldn't tell the difference between him and McCarthy, and then I did Senator Munt, and it was a whole hearing with the backstage family on whether their skyscraper home that they had built in Long Island skirted the building construction rules. They were hauled into court. So we had everything. We had Welch with his I'm just a poor country lawyer speech, and we heard that particularly agency people, but a lot of people would gather at a place they had breakfast, and they would have a radio and tune in to the episode during those weeks that the McCarthy thing was on. And after it was all over, in the next couple of years, Ray and Liz, his wife, and Lee, my wife, and I were in Florida for NBC doing a series for Monitor, the weekend thing, and all of us took the flight over to Havana because we wanted to have a look at that, and we were like the only people on the plane until Roy
Cohn?
Roy Cohn got on the plane and gave us the dirtiest look, and he still had his overcoat from flying down from New York. He was going to Havana, and he threw his coat over the back of a chair in front of us, and there was a copy of Confidential magazine in the inside pocket, which so summed up what he did for a livelihood in those days. But Time magazine said at one point we were the only ones that even touched on it, and we did it 3 times a day for the whole period of the McCarthy hearings, but 1 day later.
Did NBC give you any notes about that? Were they worried?
That was when we were doing ABC. We did it on ABC TV. We did TV on ABC for a year, and that was the year we did McCarthy. And again, that was Ray as that character. Vocally, it was carbon copy.
But you never got any notes saying to stop or
No, and neither did we ever get any complaints, as Henry Morgan did, and a lot of those people did made jokes out of commercials. We never got a bad reaction from a sponsor. I mean, if they bought us in the first place, they knew what they were getting, and they wanted that. But we got away with quite a lot of stuff, but not. And of course, everything in radio, TV, and radio is gone, and nothing but phone shows, as far as I can see. But TV gets away with a lot more than it ever did in those days.
When you were doing TV, when you were doing the Bob and Ray show, did you have any kind of censorship issues?
No. Do you have something specific
to
remember?
Because you guys work pretty clean. I mean, you weren't...
Oh yeah, absolutely, and we always took pride in that. We didn't go into it as a big thing we were making speeches about. But if it came up in I think WHDH, when we both worked together there, was a very tight-knit operation, owned by a newspaper, major paper in Boston. And so I think we were maybe too supervised in what we did. I mean, not that they ever told us anything, and we got away with it all, but we were just brought up in the other shows that we did to don't ad-lib anything about anything untold that shouldn't be. We had a built-in editing talent, I think.
Now, the television show, the name then added Club Embassy to your television
Club
show.
Embassy was a once-a-week, 15-minute, 10 p.m. show with a Milton DeLugg was the band, and he had a violinist named can't think of his name. And Julia Mead did the commercials. And it just wasn't, we never felt it was, the writers of it were agency hired, not our, I mean, we accepted them, but they really hadn't been there long enough to study us to know what kind of stuff we did. We did a lot of stuff we weren't too happy with, but that didn't last long.
You also did some game shows, Pick and Play with Bob and Ray.
That was a radio game show, probably the last one there ever was. I don't know. Very bad, but it was sponsored by Colgate, I think. No beer. It was this was long after the Peels years, but I think it was might have been Budweiser. I don't know.
And the other show you guys hosted was The Name's the Same.
Yeah, that was an established show that had several MCs, and the one they had who left, they got the idea maybe the two of us could do a two-man MC job. So it was the same show, but it was two of us questioning or answering the questions with the people.
Did you enjoy that?
It was fun, but that was where we were doing something for the job it was. Yeah, we enjoyed it. We always enjoyed what we did, but mostly when we knew we could rely on what had gotten us there. And that was about it.
I do before we leave that, I do want to ask you just about a couple of the characters that you did, starting with Wally Ballou.
Who?
Wally Ballou.
Well, they were all the composite of the people that we met or worked with, really from the start. I mean, he originally was was a character based on the man who cleaned up studios in the morning before everybody got to work, and we were on the air and we could watch him as he swept up the thing. So Wally was originally, his voice was based on, and somewhere along the line Wally became an ex-announcer with 18 awards for diction, and that's how he ended up doing awards. His hat's over there on a hanger that we wore on Broadway. Mary Magoon was every woman's program, not MC, but conductress. Tex was a cowboy character that I did every year when the rodeo came to Boston, and they would always do interviews, and we joked around with that.
That was a great character for radio with the rope tricks. And
was what?
It's a great radio character with the rope tricks for radio.
Yeah. But we had a lot of those, yeah. Things that were dying to get on TV, I guess.
Biff Burns. Biff
Burns was every sports guy. We got as many cliches into that as we could, and he originally was when we were on before the ball game. We made him a big character, and he was down with the spring games from Florida, and he would call in and do a recap of what went on in baseball there the day before, and it would always get around to, "I need some money. Can you send me more money, Bob and Ray?" And that was his payoff. Send it care of the most expensive hotel, Miami, Florida, wherever it was. It wasn't Miami, but
Fred Falvey.
Huh?
Fred Falvey. Fred Falvey.
Fred Falvey, just could have been anybody. It was a man's name of a man we knew, who we had probably done some work for, because he didn't mind. And we were very careful about names too. We got clearances on any that, like on a commercial show, because sometimes they backfire. And there's always a Wally Ballou. We had 7 or 8 Wally Balloos we ran into in radio stations touring when we were touring around the country, but they all appreciated it, like that kind of jokes.
Yeah. You also did Gory.
Gore?
Gore.
No, Gore.
Gory.
It was
Gore, I'm sorry.
Was a Frankenstein type character. I think Monitor was where we did that, and we go down, and he was the keeper of the records for NBC or something, way in the basement of Radio City. And it was Jack Benny's old joke of going down to his vault where his money was. But this was a character who lived down there, and he sounded like Boris Karloff a little bit.
Is there one character that you enjoyed playing more than others?
Oh, Ballou, of course, and Ray enjoyed, I think, Magoon, but he those characters we did over the years, the slow talker, the fast talker, the the dog trainer, everything that showed up in our stage show were characters we liked. The fellow who, like me, forgot where the story ended. That's a big problem I have, is payoff. And I thought you were going to ask me what I want on my tombstone, and I had that planned, is write if you get work, which I think is...
Where did that come from?
It came from Billboard magazine in its 40s and 50s. I don't know whether it's still published or not, but they had a lot of stuff that Variety covered, and then they also had classified ads in the back and personals, and a lot of it was from vaudeville people who were still traveling. In those days, there was still vaudeville some places, and they would put an ad in a paper saying which their parents or their siblings would read, and it would be a message rather than write a letter. They'd put a little ad in Billboard saying, "I'm in Wichita this week. Bad audience. Write if you get work." And it was that brief, I think. And those ads used to be in Billboard every week. That's where that started. Hang by your thumbs. That just grew. I don't know what that came. We each had a closing thing to say, and that came out. And I've never been able to answer what the beginning of that was.
Who do you think your audiences were? Was there a specific type that really...
I think they were mainly male, but we had a lot of women that were big fans. College audience, male and female. Doctors, professional people. A lot of doctors or lawyers were studying or one thing and another and would listen to us every day. Artists, painting artists. Don Kingman was a great Chinese watercolorist who we were very friendly with, my wife and I. And he would, I'm lost.
The watercolorist?
Oh, yeah, and he would work all day with either tapes or something on to he'd get a few ideas out. My wife bought a painting from him for one of his street scenes for one of my birthdays, and it was painted a Chinatown street, and he had Bob and Ray Laundry on a yellow sign into the picture.
Nice.
Aside from that, it's I can't think of anything.
I'll ask you a few more shows. Kurt Vonnegut's Between Time and Timbuktu.
Yeah.
What was that?
Kurt, he wanted to write for us at one time too, early in his career. He was a fan, and the public radio TV in Boston, WGBH, had put together From Time in Timbuktu, which was a compilation of characters and people that he'd written into his books. And we were they said it in a when we're doing a shoot for the moon.
Oh, a space.
Yeah, Ray was Clarkite and I was somebody else, or I was a ex-astronaut. And Kurt wrote some of the stuff, and they would go back to us, and then we would set up a scene, and it would be a clip from something that he'd written about. They had a whole big cast of actors. We did it over in Cambridge, and that was a fun show.
You also did something. I don't have the title of it, but it was done in 2 studios for NET.
Oh, a lot of studios.
But you had one that was.
Oh, that was also GBH. Yeah, that was. We may have done it in New York, but I think we went to Boston to do it. It was playing ping pong from one set to the other, and we were really playing ping pong. But I would be on one channel and he would be on the other.
How would people see it?
With two sets. It's the only way. Didn't mean a thing if it was just me hitting the ball out of my set.
Do you remember how the idea came to
It wasn't ours, it was somebody at GBH. And it played very well, I remember.
You did a special, Bob and Ray, Jane and Lorraine and Gilda.
Yeah. Well, we did Saturday Night Live several different times, but that was when they were going through a big, big shake-up in between Lorne Michaels and some of the production people, and he was out of it, I think, no, he was still there. But it was all the guys on the show, Franken and Davis, who were close friends and big fans, and they came up with the idea of doing what you brought up. Oh, Jane, and it was when the real cast wasn't going to be on. And the highlight of we did bits, some of which we later did Broadway, but the highlight was when we sang "Do You Think I'm Sexy?" What's his name? Rod Stewart, yeah. Because we fought that. We fought a lot of good stuff that we should have done. We did do that.
But you fought it? You didn't want to do it?
Didn't want to do it. We said we're not singers, and had never heard the original. I don't think at that point we'd ever heard it. We knew he was a big name, and he hadn't been on Saturday Night Live as a guest at that point, I don't think. But they talked us into doing it, and it was the biggest thing of that hour. And then the girls, the four of them were in back of us like backup singers, and we sat in stiff chairs side by side and sang it as businessmen would sing a song like that.
Why do you think it worked? It's still funny.
Yeah, it's it's because we were doing something nobody expected us. That's why it worked.
You also were on a few shows, Happy Days, for instance.
Yeah. Well, there was two Happy Days. One with the Fonz and Bosley was the father, and we were on that as one of them was going to get married, and we were hired. We were supposed to be caterers to take care of the wedding. We did that. We did Trapper John. We did some kind of a appearance in that.
Did you enjoy that? Did you enjoy playing other characters in that way?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, they were more or less written with us in mind, and we had freedom to add to it or not do something we didn't particularly like, but that didn't happen very often.
And then moving forward, the last series that you worked on was Get a Life, your son.
Yeah, that was 20 years ago. Hard to believe.
It is hard to believe.
Yeah, I played my son's father, which was typecasting kind of, and
did he have to convince you to do it? Did you get out?
No,
right away?
I was delighted to do it, and we had a year of living out in L.A., my wife and I, and we had friends out there that we saw a lot, and the show was way ahead of its time. I mean, it did get critical acclaim, and it had a huge following, still does, but it just didn't go long enough for them to do enough episodes to make it, that was the excuse we heard, to make it feasible to syndicate. So that didn't go, and then...
But it was talk about the character, your Fred Peterson, the character.
Fred,
that you played.
and the girl from Robert Young's
Eleanor
family
Donahue.
show.
Eleanor Donahue,
Eleanor
your wife.
Donahue. She was my wife, and and Jason Robards' son, who was just on something last week, I saw him, played Chris's best friend. It was Sam Robards.
Can you talk about the character that you played? It was such a...
What, with Chris?
Yeah, your character.
Well, I don't think he was anything like I am, but it was the writer's idea that it was, and it was Fox's idea to have his real father play it, and I'm sure he suggested it. Oh, we got along fine in that, and in real life.
How was it working with Chris?
Oh, it was great. He's a good actor, and he's done. I often think he should have done more serious stuff. He did a Law and Order one time, and not too long ago, and he was with Ray Romano for 2 seasons, I think, as a relative. I didn't see it that much, but no, we work great together. And we've done appearances together, and we have a simpatico that is good, I think. But he doesn't have a show, and I don't.
Now, going back to Get a Life, do you have a favorite episode of Get a Life?
No, they were all good. They were all far out, but they were good, and they got good treatment. But they backed them up with great sets and.
Yeah. There was the episode everyone really talks about a lot is Neptune 2000, the submarine episode.
Yeah, yes, yeah, I do remember that. That wouldn't be one of my favorites, but I liked them all. Some were easier to play in for me than others. That submarine thing, I never really got with it, and 2 or 3 of the other shows, but I enjoyed it very much.
Do you remember any of the ones that you really enjoyed doing? Do you remember the plots of any of the ones that you really liked to do?
No.
Did you enjoy the bathrobe, the thing, the costume where you were always in a bathrobe?
I don't. Now you're getting my
That's
poor
okay.
memory back.
That's all right. So what are you up to now? What are you doing?
Well, I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of deck tanning out there, and watch a lot of TV, a lot of news, and we watched Larry King every night until Morgan took over, and I think he's doing a great job. We usually watch that, and that's the day.
Do you watch any comedy?
No, not really. If somebody's on a show, particularly that we like Stephen Wright is a favorite of mine, and he'll show up as a guest. I always get a kick out of that. But that's it. I paint. I came up here when we moved here a couple of years ago. I was going to get a lot of painting done, and I think I've done one since we've been here. I've been unpacking all the time. So that's my big labor of love.
Now we mentioned Chris followed your footsteps, but now you have a granddaughter who is...
Yeah, Chris's daughter Abby is, and his other younger daughter Bridie is taking theater courses. Abby is pretty prominent, usually on Saturday Night Live, and she's done voiceovers, and she hasn't really hit a thing where she can make a big name, except that it's a third generation, and Saturday Night Live played that up pretty good.
Did you ever give her any advice?
Do I give her?
Have you ever given her any advice for the business?
No, I wouldn't. Her or anybody else, or Chris.
What advice would you give to someone though who wants to be in comedy?
Well, you mean to do comedy stuff? I really I'd love to be able to have some good advice. Everything that happened to me and and Ray, everything was more or less an accident and a lucky one. Getting together originally and in everything we did, it seemed to be timed. Like we ended the radio series, and then the producers of the show came to us, and we went from one thing to another. But you can't do that now. I mean, there's no place in radio for what we did, and very little in TV, because we were that was the beginning, and you'd have stagehands would call the shots almost. They would speak to the director and say, "Here's a good angle I got on Ray," and Ray would be thinking he was not on camera for that, and they would catch him in a great pose. But that isn't done anymore either. I mean, it's by the book and with approved material in most cases. I don't know. I think if any kind of our stuff could be done, it would have to be two guys who meet, fortunately, in the same job, which would be on the radio, and do the same kind of stuff. And I can't think where that would be. I'd be less than truthful to try and give anybody advice. And neither one of us ever did, I don't think.
Why do you think your material still holds up today?
Because it was covered things that were recognized as a funny situation by anybody who saw it. Like the sore loser. I mean, you may not have seen somebody say, "I wish he'd lost," "I wish he'd won," or lost, but you don't see. You think of things like that happening. The basic joke of a stuffy old guy walking down the street and his top hat blows off is a funny thing, but you can relate it, but you can't do much with it. You'd have to build a bit around that. I don't know. I'm not a good analyst of how you do what we did, which is why I feel, and Ray did, that it was successful. We certainly were told it was.
What do you attribute the longevity of your partnership with Ray to?
When what?
The longevity of your partnership, what do you attribute that to?
Well, just appreciating each other, I think, and enjoying each other. That's all it boiled down to. It's trite to say we just tried to make each other laugh, but that's really what it was. It was our job, but it was a fun job, and we got a little bit into big business with the agency people and dealing with commercial companies, which we did all right with. We did get along with them, but that's the kind of stuff we laugh at, of agency activity and stuff that struck us funny and still is.
Do you have a favorite story about Ray?
I'd have to think a little bit about it. I think it's a kind of a descriptive phrase that he said he'd wish he was a post office employee, because I know he didn't, but it fitted his feeling how he did that when he would say that. Oh, there's so many things. I couldn't give you one offhand that stand out. I mean, funny things happen to us. I got a great kick out of his 40th birthday. We were in New York, and I painted a portrait of him as those old English full-length paintings with the hat with the feathers and stuff. And that was a big surprise, which you got a kick. I have a copy of it over there. You know, nothing.
Do you know if he had a favorite story about you?
No, I don't. He made up a lot of them. No, I'm not. I can't help you that way. I'm sure Abbott and Costello had, although they didn't get along at all, but Laurel and Hardy, who are our favorites, probably had favorite stories about each other, although I don't know. We were considered ourselves, as well as performers, as businessmen. We went into the Gray Bar building every day. I went in earlier because I lived in the city, and Ray would get in the first noon or first the afternoon. And we would attend to whatever we had to do, put together commercials or shows or material, or we were doing a appearance. And by the end of the day, we were tired. We went home. And I'm sure he made his kids laugh, as I said, and I probably did mine too, but we were just friends, as boils down to.
Do you have a favorite joke or a bit that you did?
No, I don't. For somebody in the humor line, I should have one, even if I have to look it up somewhere. No, I don't. I love to hear jokes. I don't remember them 24 hours later. Used to love Jackie Leonard and you know, he did a lot like Rickles does, and I always liked the Rickles. I liked very much. And jokes, we never did jokes. Should have mentioned that before, but when you asked for a joke, we weren't in that line of humor. If I'd been a cartoonist, I probably, and I hope to be at one time, but then I would have a line. But I think today of situations where we could do a great bit on it, and I feel very sad that we can't do it. That's a leftover. I mean, we both contributed that kind of observation when we worked together, and I think we still would be doing that if everything had been same with him.
What do you think is your legacy in the business?
Well, as enjoyable people to look at and laugh at and respect and get some creative juice out of what we did by observing. I hear things that we did now and then, which every comedian, stand-up has done. They'll see something. I see in the rare times when there's people doing comedy, I'll see a thing that I think was based on something we did. Ray Knight always used to say, I did everything on the radio 20 years before they did. And he was about right.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Well, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed hearing stuff about myself that I hadn't remembered.
Well,
and don't forget my epitaph.
You want to say it again for the last?
Write if you get work. Okay?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.